shows lean left, some lean right, but we lean local and business. This is North Georgia Business RadioX with Phil Bonelli. For the next hour, we will celebrate the businesses in our area and the people that run them. Find us on Facebook at North Georgia Business RadioX and online at northgeorgiabusinessradiox.com. Now, here's Phil Bonelli.
In business and life in general, knowledge with action really is power. Here on the show, we've got an annual treat, and we're going to have the Norton Native Intelligence presented by my great pal, CEO of Norton Commercial Real Estate. Or just Norton Real Estate overall, Tommy Howard. Tommy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Phil. Always great to be back. Great to hang out with you.
We've got a lot of info to cover, and so we're going to dive in. I'm not going to go through Tommy's background, but I wish I had time to do it because Tommy is an amazing business leader. He is also a great example of somebody who's leading an organization, and he literally started out at that organization working in the summers during college, doing grunt work, and now he's the CEO of this expansive and great and growing real estate firm. So, an awesome story.
It is an awesome story. We don't have time today, but it's been a journey, that's for sure. And to learn a business from the ground up and start in the trenches and work your way up to top. You know what? You don't ever get out of the trenches. That's just a lesson you need to know.
Amen.
Yeah, the top is always in the trenches.
You don't ever get out of the trenches. A quick side note before we dive in. I was sharing with some young guy. I was getting pizza, and he didn't know he's going to get an earful. I just can't help it when I talk to young people. I just want to give him advice. But I was telling him about that life is full of problems, and that he can go achieve whatever he wants to achieve, and that if you keep learning and growing and you just persevere through problems, the problems I face today at 40 are much bigger than those I faced at 24. The ones that were big to me at 24 are almost meaningless now because I've learned how to deal with them. So you keep dealing with bigger and bigger problems, but you learn better ways to deal with them, and you've got the confidence of having resolved problems before.
You handle harder better.
Handle harder better.
Yeah. And you just get used to it.
That's right.
There's the women's Duke basketball coach. You look it up on YouTube. There's a great little 3-minute speech, and that's the title of her speech. Is we just do harder better. It's always the theme is that if I can just graduate high school, things will get easier. If I just graduate college, things will get easier. I get that first job, it'll get easier. It never gets easier.
No.
It's just we handle harder better.
Amen.
And it's just such a great quote. And I say that to young folks all the time is you just figure out how to handle it better. You
know what helps you handle harder better? Is to have a knowledgeable guide, a consultant to go along with you. That's a great thing that y'all do. Selling real estate can be somewhat of a commodity. I think of real estate agents, the 80-20 rule, or probably the 90-10 rule applies. 90% of the folks out there, they just got a real estate license. They're not really adding any value. 10% of the people are adding 90% of the value. And I love what y'all do. Y'all invest heavily time and financial resources and great brain power into putting together dominating the info and trends and data in our market so that you can serve clients and be a guide and a consultant. So Tommy's here today to help share with us some insights from their native intelligence. They're working diligently 365 days a year, mapping out trends, finding out info for their clients, and we're going to talk about some of them today, so a great treat. So Tommy, thank you so much again for being on the show.
Happy to be here.
Let's dive in. Let's look at some of the main thoughts. What's the number one thing that stands out to you, Tommy?
Well, I was going to stick with our theme of young people because I think that's this next generation is really again the obstacles today are so much different than the obstacles that we had 20 or 30 years ago. And one of the biggest things is, we talk about home ownership and affordability. Those are, huge words today that we hear all the time and over national media. And of course, what we do is we look at local. Now, some of these local trends are national trends as well, but we really see what's happening in our own backyard and what what can we do to make it better? What can we do to fix some of those problems? And some of them may not be things out of our control, but we can have some ideas on how to make things better. And one of the trends we had this year was wealth generation or wealth creation for the next generation. And how do they do that? So I could tell you, starting in the 1950s, the number one generation of wealth was through home ownership. That is what a lot of folks have been able to parlay that. So, the idea was you graduate school, you get that first job, maybe get married, you buy a house, you live in that house 5 or 6 years, and what happens next? You have a child. And then you're like, well, I need a little bit bigger house. Well, you've got 5, 6, 7 years in the house. You've built a little equity. You've got a little appreciation. Around here, it's about 4 to 5% year over year. So over 6, 7 years, you got a little bit of appreciation, not to mention the equity you've built up. And then you do that again the next 5 or 6 years. You have another kid. You get another house. And next thing you know, you keep parlaying that money into this asset that keeps growing. And, there are some economists over there who don't necessarily believe in home ownership today, and some of that is the challenges of interest rates and those types of things. But over time, as you live in these houses, you're just building equity, you're building wealth. And not only that, you have an asset to borrow against. So you're using it to start a business, to take some of that equity, or, you need to put a kid through college. It has so many other possibilities other than just that one asset. So, so the question is, and this was, I want to give credit to one of my agents, Brad Abernathy. We were having this conversation, and he says to me, but what if what if that cycle never starts? What if they never buy that first house? What if which is a trend we're seeing more and more of for various reasons. But today's generation is waiting longer to buy a house, waiting longer to have children, waiting longer to get married. And so it's just, now they're also living longer, but it is taking more time to get to that point. So, and today with affordability problems, which we can come back to, but in interest rates and all those things, it becomes very, very expensive to buy a house. Today, the average home price here in Hall County is over $500,000. Okay?
Wow.
So if I were to get just a normal conventional 80-20 loan today, just to start the process, just for the loan, I need $100,000. Now, you also got to take into account taxes, insurance, maintenance. You need to furnish the house. You got utilities. You have all the things that go with home ownership, maintenance. And so it becomes a very, very expensive process. And so in today's world, if that's my average, coming out of college, I'm going to need a household income today of over $140,000, $150,000 just to even get to the average. And median is around $465,000. So even on the median side of things, it's very, very, very expensive. So there has to be ways, and a lot of it today is, we have a challenge because it's a supply and demand. We just don't have the supply. We got the demand. And then obviously it's very costly. But I will tell you, there are solutions, potential solutions.
I knew we were going to get there. I felt optimistic, Tommy.
Well, and I'll tell you, I can't. I wish I could take credit for this. I heard this from a national economist, and I can't give you the ins and outs if this would work or not. But it seems to make a lot of sense to me. Is instead of supplementing people with either tax incentives or cash or whatever to purchase houses, we have to lower the cost of houses somehow, which sounds crazy coming from a real estate guy, but affordability. But if we're not selling any houses, it doesn't do us any good.
It's no commission on zero.
That's correct. No commission on zero. But I will say, so the solution that I heard was, you do a one-time tax-free holiday on capital gains tax. Do it for 12 months. You do it on any single-family residence owned by an investor, or if it's your own home. Typically today, a homeowner can parlay that into their next house, and there's no tax consequences.
Right.
But with someone who's an investor, they don't have that opportunity.
And they're owning more and more of the homes.
Correct. So if you exclude multifamily, you maybe throw in a duplex or triplex, but for the most part, you look at mostly single-family, and if that may get people off. If I've got 10 rental houses and I'm in my 60s or 70s and I'm ready to cash out, and you're telling me I can now save 40% on taxes by being able to sell them now, I'm probably going to sell them.
Yep.
I'm going to get off the fence. You know what you're going to do? You're going to flood the market immediately with houses. So that helps with the supply issue. It may not even be enough, but it'll be something. And if you can do that, it may at least moderate home prices from going up dramatically like we saw over the last 5 years. And so that could be a potential solution to help move the needle. And I had a gentleman after the forecast, I had said that, who came up to me. He said, I'm exactly that. And I would sell it tomorrow if that was an opportunity. I would do it. He says, how do we get it done? Now, I'm not the guy to get it done. I'm not a politician. But maybe someone out there is listening who's a politician.
If you're listening, let's do it. All right, we're going to pick back up with that after this break on North Georgia Business Radio X. Life is always full of problems, but if you look hard enough, you will often find a solution. Welcome back to North Georgia Business Radio X. I am your happy host, Phil Bonelli, here with my good pal, Tommy Howard, CEO of Norton Real Estate. Speaking a little bit before the break on housing affordability issues, starting to get into that, and how do you create generational wealth if you never get to kick off the process of home ownership. This rings very true with me. I'll tell you, Tommy, that Lindsay and I benefited greatly when I graduated college May of 2007. 8 months later, I had my first starter home, which back then cost $150,000. I bought it. Prices had just started to drop in the spring of 2008, and I was like, I better snatch up a house before the prices go back up. Well, they plummeted after that, so I kind of bought at a peak, but they still went up over time, and I was able to get equity out of that. I put into my next house, put a lot of sweat equity into it, got a lot of appreciation, and that allowed me to get the farm. And it also did allow me to get some seed capital, no pun intended, on farm operations. If I had not had that occur, and I do want to point out that even at that time, I worked for a bank which had a special deal for employees that they could get 100% financing.
Wow.
So I was helped out with the equity. I was helped out with, there was actually affordable housing, and that benefited my life. So I am the direct recipient in my life of building up equity in a home, which, as we talked about, it's nearly impossible for a new couple to start doing today.
Yeah. And what's interesting is what you said about when you bought your house.
Mm-hmm.
So I get asked all the time, it's like, well, you know, when is the best time for me to buy a house? When is the best time to buy? And I'm today.
Today.
When do you
baby.
plant a tree? 20 years ago. When do you buy a house? Today.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and people say, well, God, what if prices go down? And I use the recession as a perfect example of that. And I said, because I know people just you bought. People bought at the peak, 06, 07,
yep.
And all of a sudden, you know, everything goes topsy-turvy, and the economy tanks. But if you were fortunate enough to be in a situation that you did not have to sell your house, you lost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, you gained it all back.
Tremendously.
Plenty.
Woo!
Think about if you bought anyone today that has owned a house prior to 2020 or 2019. Think about the amount of appreciation. I can tell you here in Hall County, since 2020 to 2025, in 5 years, home prices have appreciated by 61%.
Oof.
You've doubled your money, in essence, over a 5-year period, where are you going to get that kind of return on any investment you make?
That's right.
Now, it's also part of the challenge, because what did not escalate with that was median income. So median home price continued to increase, median income did not, which caused this affordability crisis, as people just aren't making enough money to keep up with the inflation of houses.
Mm-hmm.
And also, let's just say, food, goods, services, everything has inflated.
On that note, we see a lot of new apartments in town. Let's talk about that. I mean, is that the answer, going vertical? Do you think we're saturated with apartments right now? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's the right word. I think we are oversaturated with apartments right now. Last I looked, we had about 300 available units.
Oh, my goodness.
In the 30501 area code.
Whew.
So that's Gainesville. So that's a lot. And not only that, if you look at the new development that we have at Lakeshore Mall, which will have more multifamily. You have what was the old Blue Ridge development across the street, which is also more housing and multifamily and rentals. So you have we haven't stopped, and we're continuing to add to our market. Now, the good news is that our market is still growing. We have population, we have jobs, good quality of life. We have all of those things. We're very attractive. So those things will get filled in over time, and we're starting to see that pick back up. But it could be slow because we do have a lot of that product. And quite frankly, to the question, is it the solution? Well, when your average rent is $1,900 a month, that's not affordable. Now the problem is that our average mortgages are over $3,000 a month. So pick your poison, if you will. Yep. The thing about an apartment, at least you've got somewhere to live, and you're saving $1,000, $1,100. You do forego the home insurance. You do forego the maintenance for the most part. There's a lot of expenses that you don't have to have by the home ownership. But that home ownership really compounds it once you have it. Again, all for it. Still think people need to do it, and it's still going to be the best way to generate wealth, in my opinion, unless you're somebody who's savvy on the stock market or knows how to invest in other things. But I think investing in myself is where I would begin if I was going.
I'd invest in you, Tommy. I mean,
I think you have, Phil. I think we've invested in you as well. With your farm and your entrepreneurship and everything you've done in the creative things, which is another solution. Is we have to be creative.
Yep. And
you're creative. You're creative with your farm. Not only do you use it just to from a great ecological standpoint, and great that you're doing this, providing food and sustenance for us, but you're also doing it because it's a way to share with everyone a business plan, to look at life lessons. When you have corporate groups come out and see Hopewell Farms, you've parlayed that into not just one specific thing. You've got multiple things. And certainly is great for our community to have more like that. And I think that's what businesses have to be doing. And young people today, they got to be more creative.
Get creative. Opportunities abound. This is America, Jack. And guess what? Not only do we live in a place, nowhere is perfect. It's all made of sinful, fallen human beings. But golly, it's pretty special to be in a place with so much opportunity. If you want to go work hard, you can make it happen. And you do not have to be a genius. Go get creative, figure things out, and don't quit. And I am so thankful. In business, I think you can put the factors that lead to success into two general categories. One is management. That's the decisions you make. That's your business plan, your ideas, how you execute. But the second is market. And I could have the best business plan in a crummy market, and it won't do as good as a crummy business plan in a great market. And we live in a great market. And I'm so thankful with the farm and with my consulting business. I live in Northeast Georgia. I didn't pick. My parents moved me here, and I'm so thankful. Opportunities are endless here. So go get it done, folks.
Absolutely.
And buy a house.
Please buy a house. We'd love to start a business. We'll help you with that.
Start a business.
Yep.
And hey, look, I tell you what, if you are like, hey, yes, I get it. We need more housing. We got to have that. But you're like, I don't really want to manage rental housing and stuff. I mean, I have some great folks at Norton, and they'll manage it for you. We'll pick back up with that after this break on your home buying enthusiasts here at North Georgia Business Radio X.
Steve and Ashley finally got their twins to sleep through the night. But the thought of saving for 2 college tuitions kept them up at night. That's why they decided to meet with their Regions banker to build a Regions Green Print plan, a financial roadmap personalized for what matters most to them. Now Steve and Ashley are confident in reaching their goals for today and tomorrow.
Class of 2044.
Start building your financial confidence with a Regions Green Print plan. It's free, and it's only from Regions Bank. Visit regions.com to find a branch near you. Regions Bank, member FDIC.
We all need a roof over our heads. Welcome back to North Georgia Business RadioX. I am your happy host, Phil Bonelli, here with my good pal, CEO of Norton Real Estate, the Tommy Howard. And we're talking about all things real estate in North Georgia, affordability, housing, etc. And one, which is not such a happy thing, but quite an important topic, is, we have a growing issue with folks who do not have homes. And there's a lot of things that play into that, but we can all agree people sleeping out of doors is not a win for anybody. And that's an important thing to note as we dive into that. We're in a community, and there is no his problem or her problem. It truly is our problem. I tell you what, I want great things for our next generation. I want good things for my kids. Kids who grow up sleeping in a car, they're not going to be able to study as well. They're not going to be able to do as well, and they're going to have less opportunities, and that makes them less productive citizens, and it doesn't help anybody. Anyway, let's just chat homelessness in the area, Tommy.
Sure. So, and you're absolutely right. It is not a them problem. It's an us problem. And, we've seen the tent cities, and it's not, a lot of people, when they think homelessness, they think large urban centers. You think San Francisco, Atlanta, New York. It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's in Lula, Georgia. It's in Gainesville, Georgia. It's Claremont. It's everywhere. We are, you can't really escape it. And, to the fact that it's everybody's problem is not just that it's a fellow human being that needs shelter.
Although that is a very important consideration.
Very important consideration. And you say, why is a real estate guy talking about homelessness? Because what am I in? I'm in the home business, and it is important for us to take care of people and put a roof over somebody's head as much as we can. And so it is a challenge. And the thing is, what a lot of people don't think is, well, it doesn't really affect me. I see it, I walk by it, I drive by the panhandler, it doesn't affect me. But it does, because it puts strain on our resources. It puts strain on our police forces. It puts strain on our mental health specialists, the hospital. It puts a strain on just the community in general, the tent cities that we see under the bridges, and we know where they are. And they're people hiding in the woods. They're not just on a park bench in a park, even though that does happen also. But it does put a strain on all of our resources, and it's something that we all need to help with. And you say, well, why aren't we doing more on that sector? And today, there's a lot of debate. They figure somewhere between 450 and 500 homeless here in the Hall County area.
Wow.
There's a lot of people who think that number's a lot higher that work in this every day. And you say, how do you get there? How does that ever even happen? And, believe it or not, and I won't mention any names, but there are communities around us that have actually bused homeless to our market and dropped them off.
Wow.
And part of the reason is because we are very fortunate here in Gainesville, Hall County, to have such amazing resources. And you look at all the charities, especially the ones you and I work with, and we have great resources for our citizens. And so they hopefully can take advantage of that. But part of the problem is 90% either have a criminal history, it's mental health, substance abuse problems. The cycle it's an ugly cycle, and it makes it really hard to get out of that cycle unless you have someone to help you. And it's not just a single prong attack. It's not saying I just need to put a roof over their head. I got to help them with their substance abuse, their mental health, get them a job. It's a lot of different things that have to happen. And the only way we can do that is not just one organization take this lead on. It can't just be your local United Way or Salvation Army or Good News. It needs to be all of those organizations working in tandem, figuring out how to get everyone the resources they need to solve these multiple issues. And that's the only real way to attack homelessness. You can't just write them a check or hand them a dollar bill and say spend it wisely.
Oh, yeah.
You got to give them a roadmap, and for some it becomes very difficult, or or search out their families to see if we can get some help there too. But a lot of times they're estranged from their families. And so it's just a matter of can we get people back up on their feet?
Three things to take from this. If you take nothing else from this episode, take these three things. One, as we said earlier, homelessness is not his or her problem. It is our problem. Even if you do not care at all about the fellow human beings sharing this globe with you, it impacts you in a negative way when folks are homeless. Two, things are holistic and interconnected. As Tommy is saying, they are not linear. It is not someone is homeless, you can just put them in a home, problem solved. There is so much to it. Employment, mental health, substance, all these things. And we've got to get creative and just care. You just got to care and look to find solutions. And the third thing is, there truly should be no judgment. But for the grace of God, it would be I. And hurt people. And, I am so blessed. I had two parents who love me. And I don't have trauma that, I need to seek solace in substances or whatever, and I don't have schizophrenia. My wife would tell you I'm a little crazy. I mean, that is true. But I've got her, So anyway, it's an issue, and we do have great organizations that you can support, like the United Way, that really do help that issue. I want to give a shout out to our first responders and to Gainesville PD and Hall County Sheriff's Department for all the great work that they have done, and for the United Way in helping with mental health.
And they deal with it every day, and they do a great job with it. I wanted to mention this too, is at the forecast the other night, I used this, but I want to give people a good kind of mental picture and maybe tug at their heartstrings for a minute. But if I were to go out here on the Gainesville Square, and if I were to put a homeless person on one corner and a box of puppies on the other, who would you help? Now, I'm a dog guy. I love dogs, and I'd love to be the guy that I'm going to go help my fellow human being, but I don't know, and that's a real big thing to say. Is, am I willing to help that person? And I think what we see is when you see a box of puppies, you see them as helpless. Mm-hmm. They can't fend for themselves, and and they're cute and they're cuddly, and it's easy to help. But when you have a human being who's a little tattered, who is, maybe hasn't taken a shower in a while, who hasn't eaten, who is maybe, has some mental issues, it's really hard to bring yourself in. We think of safety things, which, don't get me wrong, absolutely that is a consideration in all of that. But who are you going to help? Mm-hmm. And how do we help? And we go to our police force. We go to these professionals who deal with this every day. So I appreciate your shout out to them, because you're absolutely right, because they know how to handle these situations. I think now the Gainesville Police Department, I want to say they have at least maybe 3 mental health specialists.
They're leaders in that.
Absolutely they are. And, Jay Parrish and his group have just done a fantastic job of really approaching that. And I don't know how many, but I know that they've really put a lot of resources into that mental health issue.
Before we go to our next break, I got a question. How many Publixes do we need? It is pretty crazy. There's on my way home, which is 15 minutes, I do pass by with the new Publix on Thompson Bridge Road. I think I'll pass by like 4 grocery stores, which is pretty nuts. Yeah. But there's a reason. They have metrics. They know we need to be up here because there's people who are buying groceries that are going to pass by.
People need to eat. And I'll tell you, it's interesting you say that, because on the news, just about every day you hear of that next retailer closing. The Joann's, the Big Lots, the Party Cities are all, filing Chapter 7, Chapter 11, going under. And then you say, well, gosh, but there's a new shopping center being built right around the corner from all of those things. How is that happening? And it is true. People have to eat. It's a resource. It's something you have to have. And I don't have to have no offense to Party City, but I don't have to have the balloons, and I don't have to have the party favors, but I do have to eat. And so, unfortunately, and I'll tell you, that's really the Amazon effect more than anything.
The Amazon effect,
yep.
Yes.
You just get on Amazon and you order, and it comes to your door. and I don't have to step foot into any of those buildings anymore.
Well, and on that same line, and I'll share this right before we go to the break, is that I look at a new retail grocery store as, yes, that is a retail grocery store. I can walk in and get myself an Olipop, which, by the way, if you haven't tried an Olipop, go change your life today and get one. But also, it is an Amazon-esque distribution center. It's closer so that they have more route density to go and deliver groceries, which all these grocery stores do. So, all right, we'll pick back up after that break and my love of Olipops after this break on North Georgia Business RadioX. You know, I'm a big proponent that you should sprout where you're planted. I am so thankful that where the good Lord planted me is right here in Northeast Georgia. Welcome back to North Georgia Business RadioX. I am your host, Phil Bonelli. I am that happy guy, and I am the one who was telling you about Olipop before the break. They're not a sponsor of the show, but if you were a drinker of soft drinks, I would encourage you to try Olipop. It's delicious and healthy, and I want to get one on the way home, and I think I will. And I'm here with Tommy Howard, CEO of Norton Real Estate, one heck of a guy, and he's been dropping some great knowledge on us. And we've talked about different real estate trends, different issues, and I kicked off the segment with Sprout Where You're Planted because we are here. If you're listening to the show, if you're listening on the radio, you are in Northeast Georgia. If you're listening as a podcast, you could be anywhere. But I am here, and I'm glad I'm here. And if I'm in Northeast Georgia, Tommy, and I'm like, hey, I want to get some real estate, maybe let's say as an investment, what's the best direction for me to go? Should I get some rental houses? Should I get an apartment? Should I get land? What do you think?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Spin the wheel. Get any of the above, folks.
It's all, it really is what caters to your needs and wants. I mean, for instance, well, we got that.
Somebody calling to buy some land.
Yeah. Hey, let's get them online and let's go. But whether it's, income producing, whether it's land, whether it, commercial real estate, whatever it may be, it's just really what you really know about. I invest in what I know. That's why I invest in real estate.
Very wise.
It's what I know. And so, but the common denominator with all of the things you just said is the land. I can't build a house without land. I can't build apartments. I can't build a shopping mall. I can't build a hospital. I can't do it without that one little thing underneath it, and that's the dirt. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that is one of the most precious resources we have here in North Georgia is the dirt.
The dirt.
And, we are very fortunate. We still have a lot of opportunity there because we have a lot of dirt, and we have places to develop, and we have places to grow. And it's just not going to get any cheaper.
Yep.
And I think that people will continue to look at land as their refuge. I look at you and your farm. It's your refuge.
It is.
And you could stay on your land and never leave.
I could stay. I could stay there and never leave, and I could go fishing. I could go kayaking. I could shoot stuff. I could chop wood.
You can do all the things.
I can do whatever I want to do.
But you can feed yourself.
Yep.
You can.
I do.
You do. You do feed yourself. And so that's that precious resource in land, and you have so many things to do with that. So I think that's always the best opportunity is to be able to, because you're just not going to make more of it. I can make more money, but I can't make more land. God only gave us so much of it, and we have to do what we can with it. Now, here's the thing, but we have to be good stewards of it as well.
Amen.
Yeah.
Tommy Howard.
Yes.
I would encourage anyone. I love having land. If you gave me $10 million today, I would spend $9 million of it on land, and I'd highly encourage you to get some. If you don't even have to do something with it. I tell you what, a great need and opportunity. All these farmers are retiring, and there's no one to take it over. If you want to get a 50 or 100 acres, you could find somebody to farm it for you, and then you just live on this beautiful farm. If they don't have the money, most aspiring farmers, they don't have the money to get 100 acres or 50 acres. So there's ways to get creative and make partnerships that are win-wins for everybody.
Land leases are still very, very popular. I know a lot of farmers that have expanded their farms doing that. They may have 500 acres, but they farm 3,000 acres.
Yep.
And because they're leasing all the land around them to do their, and they know that the more corn I can grow, the more soybeans I can grow, the more money I can make. But I have to have the land to be able to do it.
Gotta have it.
But you don't have to own it in order to grow it.
Nope.
And
check out, too, we've had Brett Hoffman for the North Georgia Land Trust on. I'm also on the board of the Land Trust. Go check out the North Georgia Land Trust, and it is a great resource with all things owning land and protecting land. And that is the thing, as we talk about development, there is going to be development. Development's cool. But we've got to protect our green spaces so that we have this beautiful place to live in. And for folks who live in the apartments or just live in a subdivision, to go out and walk and stretch their legs and have the trees to clean the air, scrub out the CO2 out of there. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I
know a lot of folks in and around Metro Atlanta who, live on postage stamps. They don't have much of a yard. And and a lot of this happened during COVID, is they realized that they're stuck in their house with their families, their kids, and they got no place to go. Mm-hmm. And they have no place for their kids to run around or just get out. And they're going crazy, literally just going crazy, stuck in these houses. And we had such a rush for people to buy, looking for 50, 100-acre farms here in North Georgia, an hour away, hour and a half away, even here in Hall County, but places like Blue Ridge and LJ, it just absolutely exploded in 2020 and 21 because you know what people were buying? They were buying a backyard. But you know what that backyard was? It was 50 acres. It was 100 acres.
It's a nice backyard.
It's a big backyard.
There.
And they wanted space, and they said, gosh, I'm tucked into this bubble here in this urban center, and I got to get out. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to leave here permanently, but I need my space, and I need that freedom, and I want a place to go have a playground and enjoy and get away from the chaos of the week. And that is what a lot of people, a lot of our roots gravitate back towards being on the family farm. And whether we enjoyed it or not as a kid, I think we certainly look back on that with fond memories and say, I had the opportunity to be on that farm and grow up with my family and understand what that was like. And I think that's just an amazing thing. And we want to go back to our roots. When things go crazy, we want to go back to where it all began.
That's why I keep telling my kids, you're going to love that I had you collect these eggs one day. I will tell you, we talked about creativity earlier. And one thing we were talking about during the break that I think is interesting is that my farm is kind of like the milkman all over again, because we deliver fresh eggs and then frozen meat to people's homes right to their door every week. And this is not a commercial for Hopewell Farms GA, but now it just became one.
I think it's a great idea.
HopewellFarmsGA.com. Go get yourself a weekly subscription. But when you're looking at doing things creatively, I am going back to being like a milkman, which is old, has been replaced, but now we're doing it again in the 2025 spin. And there might be some old things that we improved with efficiencies, but there were actually negatives that came with that you can revive and make anew again. I think that, for example, like civic clubs, like Rotary and Kiwanis, I do think that the ones that know how to do it right will make a resurgence because people start to yearn again for face-to-face.
Absolutely. I said this the other day. I was at my Rotary Club on Monday, and I looked around the room, and I said, this is probably one of the biggest crowds we've had since COVID, and people have come back. And it took, COVID has been over for 2-3 years now, easily, or not over, but it's subsided, if we will. And so now people are really getting comfortable again, but it took a while.
Yep.
And you got to think it's now 2025. COVID was 6 years ago.
Wow.
And so, but there's still lingering effects from that. And like you said, one of them is people getting back to being together, to looking somebody in the eye, shaking a hand, giving a hug. We didn't know how much we missed that stuff until we got it all back.
Oh, yeah.
So it's great to see. And just look at the Gainesville Downtown Square, people back out and shopping and going to restaurants. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, and there are opportunities that come from all sorts of negatives. And I got the first cows and started the farm in March of 2020. And if I had been going to the same amount of face-to-face meetings, I wouldn't have been able to figure it all out and make the mistakes and get it going. So I couldn't have done it without COVID. Go out and get you some land, get you a house. Is it GoNorton.com?
GoNorton.com.
GoNorton.com. Tommy, thank you so much for your insights. We will look forward to having you on next year and any time in between. So go get some land, folks. And we wish you the best. And here, for real, that stuff we said about homelessness, let's all do our part. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to North Georgia Business Radio X with Phil Bonelli. What local business do you know that should be highlighted on our program? Let us know. Just search North Georgia Business Radio X on Facebook or contact Bo at businessradiox.com. See you next time, and remember to support our local businesses.